This is Talk Radio.
Keeping you up to date across the UK. Online, on DAB+, and on the Talk Radio app.
Rob Rinder on Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, I'm Rob Rinder and I'm with you on Drive Time on Talk Radio until 7 o'clock this evening. We're going to move over to our political panel. Before we do, I would like to say, Martin, who's just tweeted me to say that he's heard my voice and it's woken him up. So I'm glad that you're awake, Martin. I hope you had a good 40 winks. Carry on listening. And I don't know why you fell asleep in the first place. Perhaps it was because you hadn't tuned into our political panel, which we come to now, with Joseph Silke, who's a communications officer at Bright Blue, presumably conservative leading. I doubt he's a communist. We've also got Dr. Ashok Kumar, who's a political economist at Birkbeck University. It has been a very challenging 24 hours, to say the very least. I have to say to the two of you, bored of using the word challenging. And the reason I'm using that language is because we're not allowed to swear before 9 o'clock in the evening. It's very difficult to know where to begin, and we don't have enough time. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm a real political anorak, is that unusually in a nation like America, especially at the moment, which has never been more politically polarized, there seems to be agreement across the media, left and right, that Biden has done an absolutely shocking job here. So the question is, what is the future of his presidency? I'm going to start with you, if I may, Dr. Ashok Kumar. Has this affected Biden's presidency? I mean, I doubt at his age he wants a second term. Who knows? But what has this done to him politically?
Well, I mean, people need to understand the political dynamics in the U.S. generally, with few exceptions, Vietnam being one of them. Wars are very important to a section of American society, but not to everyone. And so I don't think it has a huge effect on his political and electoral sort of support. I do think Biden's response was abysmal, but not for the reasons that maybe some people might think. I mean, I think in this case, Biden had really no choice. Mm-hmm. Obama, Trump had promised this, so it was kind of inevitable. Biden was simply ratifying the peace process signed by Trump and backed by the Pentagon in February of 2020. Mm-hmm. I think that it's actually his response is what is the kind of height of cowardice. He refused to own America's defeat. Instead, he sort of complained that Afghans did not fight for themselves. Let's consider this. 250,000 people were killed in this war. 70,000 of them Afghan soldiers and police, 100,000 civilians, $1 trillion spent on it. And he blames the Afghan soldiers. I think that's the height of cowardice. And for that, he should be ashamed, but not for withdrawing the troops.
Dr. Ashok, thank you for putting it in the way that you do and for those numbers. I just had a caller who called in to say that to ask the question, why didn't the Afghan people stand up for themselves? And you, in that one sentence, have disproven it. Joseph Silke at Bright Blue, you can't disagree with any of that, surely? I don't know.
I think it's absolutely repellent to blame the Iraqi people, the Afghan people, to be honest. I think what a sad, sorry episode this entire thing has been. And President Biden can't just blame everybody apart from himself. I think the speech last night was shocking and depressing. If you closed your eyes, it could have been Donald Trump speaking. It's certainly not what I expected from such an experienced foreign policy operator. And to be honest, it's far more cold-hearted than I expected from a man who's suffered so much personal tragedy. Biden said America is back. Where is America now? It's running away.
Dr. Ashok Kumar, I hear what you say, that it won't interfere with the kind of political landscape in America and people's attitudes towards Biden, given how polarized it is. But, there's something about projecting force into the world. There are midterms coming up. There's a lot of, there were certainly places like Ohio, which went blue, which was Trump when he won the election. Certainly some of the flyover states, some of the southern states, for example, I think in Carolina, for example, that went Democratic for the first time. These are voters that feel proud of America, that projecting American values across the world. They may not want to fight wars, but certainly they look proudly on their nation. They are patriotic despite how that may or may not have been denigrated in the last few years. And this may surely affect Democratic chances in the midterms and consequently on Biden's presidency and certainly his popularity, no?
Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of his overall popularity, maybe. But I think if you look at the polling data, most Americans, when you talk about Afghanistan, most Americans, it didn't even make the top 10 in terms of what they were worried about. Many Americans didn't even know that America was still there. The fact is that America occupied Afghanistan for 20 years and it collapsed in less than a week. And they didn't build anything that might redeem their mission, and it's pretty well established. The U.S. governed by financing a sort of corrupt kleptomaniac kind of puppet government. And so it's not like they could really defend that position from the left and the right, including Trump supporters and the left were in support of withdrawing troops. Americans don't like endless occupations. Overwhelmingly, we know that. So I think that, yes, there is a lot of patriotism in certain parts of America. There's no denying that. But I honestly don't think this withdrawal, as cowardly as his statements were, I think the withdrawal itself in a few weeks will be, if asked, people will be in support of it.
Joseph Silke, I see you nodding along to Dr. Ashok Kumar's informed view there, right?
I think humiliation at the hands of the Taliban probably won't help him win a second term in office, but it's absolutely right that American public opinion has been supportive of withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, and indeed Democratic nominees across the board supported that. But that could still change if the ramifications from the withdrawal become severe. And I just want to pick up on a point that Dr. Kumar made about some Americans not even knowing that American troops were still there. The American presence was much smaller than it was back in 2001. And I don't see any reason why a smaller contingent of American troops could not have stayed there to help hold the line against the Taliban.
That's one of the important points, Dr. Kumar, is that over the last year there'd been limited losses, and it was supposed to be a planned and I use this language, a mindful, organised withdrawal. Ultimately that hasn't happened. It's being reported across the media landscape, which has otherwise been universally, certainly the Washington Post, the New York Times, all of the usual suspects supportive of Biden. They, for the first time, have come out and criticised him. That must damage him, surely.
Well, I can't really speak to we'll know whether it's damaging or not in a few weeks or months or maybe even years. I think it's really hard to say at this point. I would say that on the question of continuing an occupying force, I think that there's no evidence, again, that 20 years of an occupation has built any kind of infrastructure, has made the government, given the government any legitimacy. This was inevitable unless you had an endless occupation. That's the question. The question is, do you support an endless occupation or not? I mean, look at it. It's presented as humanitarian intervention, but the occupation spent $1 trillion. Over the lion's share of that went to financing really the boots on the ground and winning over building patronage networks.
Can I pause you there, Dr. Kumar? You're very interesting on this point, and this is where our personal interests, our Venn diagrams cross over one another. You're a political economist. It wasn't just that, but of course the years of inquiries that no doubt will ensue in America and here, certainly in America, I can see it coming. Loads of that money, that $1 trillion, went to line the pockets of criminals and government after government that America and the West, NATO especially, propped up, right? Is there any way around that?
Well, I would say there's two questions here. If I can answer this really quickly, if for the next time I don't think this should be done. I also think if you prop up a government and then, look, Afghanistan is a very underdeveloped peasant agrarian society. People talk about Kabul. Kabul isn't really the seat of power. It's the countryside where the Taliban won. And if you have a puppet government that's hoovering up all these resources and then being paid to burn down fields of poppy, you're not going to win over the population. In 2001. There was almost no one who's addicted to heroin. And now 10% of young people in that country are addicted to heroin. I mean, it is a question, and it isn't, and, the US has just announced that they'll have a permanent special military unit based in Kuwait of 2,500 troops that are ready to bomb Afghanistan and maim more people and kill more people potentially at any given moment. I don't think that is the answer. More violence has not proven to be an effective tactic to win over the support of unoccupied people.
Joseph Silke, you've heard what Dr. Kumar has to say. Is it ever effective, ever, for us to go adventuring around the world and try to build and project our version of Western liberal democracy, especially given the cat-handed way that Dr. Kumar describes what we did? And by we, I mean the Americans, the West, and NATO allies.
Well, I don't think we can impose liberal democracy on another society per se, but I think supporting the development of Afghanistan is something that we clearly failed at doing. There was a rampant corruption within the Afghani government, and that's undeniable. I thought it was interesting what Ben Wallace said, actually. It might have been more than a month ago now. He spoke about the 20 years that we spent in Afghanistan and said, well, we think of that as a long time, but really when it comes to nation building, developing those institutions that you need to provide a stable society and even a democracy, it might even take longer than that. So we have to learn the lessons of Afghanistan, and maybe 20 years isn't enough, and that's quite a daunting prospect.
Thank you very much, Joseph Silke. Before we go and end this discussion, some people may have missed the beginning of what you had to say. Dr. Kumar, you gave us some numbers about the Afghan army. I don't know whether you're on social media, but certainly I'd like to know them, and I think we all deserve to be better informed. Can you just repeat some of the statistics you gave us earlier about the Afghan army? I'm going to make a note while you're talking. I'm going to be, if people know what I say now, they'll know that I'm committing it to memory. I'm going to be writing it in big.
Well, it's again very hard to get these numbers, accurate numbers, but the total number of people killed since 2001 is estimated at 250,000.
Take it slowly, please. 250,000. Yeah.
250,000. The estimated number of Afghan soldiers and troops, military, that were killed is around 69,000, and the estimated number of civilian deaths is about 100,000. So 100,000 civilian deaths killed by occupying forces. So it's and then there's $1 trillion that were spent by the U.S. alone. So that's the numbers. Again, these are contested, but it's broadly. There's a really good piece on this actually in the recent New Left Review written by Tariq Ali. If you want to look at the numbers and also the effects of this long term,
we will do. But the critical statistic you gave was the 69,000. Members of the Taliban army who have lost their lives, and it's a response and an answer in part to those who say, why didn't the Afghanistani army stand up for their own country? And the answer is, well, they did. Thank you very much, gentlemen. What a privilege it is to listen to two informed people have a discussion, to have the space and the time to do so. Thank you, Dr. Ashok Kumar, political economist at Birkbeck University, and Joseph Silke, communications officer at Bright Blue. I'm Rob Rinder, I'm on Talk Radio, and after the break, something completely different, which I have to say has been amusing me since I heard about it. I can't believe it's a real thing. Stay on board.